Hello, Santa Fe. It's May 1st, May Day, Monday. We're here live coming from Santa Fe Community Television. Bill O'Donnell is another host on this.
Good morning.
And we have Danila. Tell me your full name so I
Sure.
don't mispronounce it.
Sure. Danila Crispin-Zadovsky.
Okay, that's
I'm a community organizer for Pre-K for Santa Fe.
okay. And we have
Good morning.
Simon Says.
Well, I'm Simon Brackley. I'm President and CEO of the Santa Fe Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for the invitation.
Well,
Glad to have you here.
we're glad to have you here. We decided to put this television program on because we were kind of late in getting it started. Bill and I kind of put it together really quick. We had a lot of comments, people wanting us to come on TV and talk about the soda tax that we've been discussing.
That's correct.
And thank you, Bill, for coming up and getting this together.
This is community television. If this is not an issue for the community, then I don't know what is, because in my opinion, we're all in favor of pre-K. We just have some differences perhaps on opinions on how best to handle it, and the city has gone to the effort of creating this opportunity for you citizens and us citizens to come out and to make our feelings known, and that will be on Tuesday, May 2nd, and we hope that this conversation today will be of value to you in making your decision for the city of Santa Fe.
Santa Fe, this is the tale of two entities. A little story. Once upon a time, in a hamlet in northern New Mexico, there were two personalities, one named Pro and one named Con. Both were concerned about the education of their little ones in the village. But to achieve this goal, funds and backing from the local citizens would be needed. Well, that problem is easy enough to solve, said Pro. Let's tax something like maybe sugary drinks. We can charge it off to the taxpayer. Now, wait a minute, said Con. We can't do that. People are already spending too much on taxes. Both Pro and Con agreed that this was not going to be a Band-Aid fix. It came to pass that a vote would go before the public. Pro and Con gathered their fans and began their publicity campaigns through solicitations, media exposure, and personal contacts. Both Pro and Con took what they considered to be the high and moral ground. Pro said that with proper funding we could improve childhood education and create a healthier population. Con said, at what cost? Many families will hurt financially and the poor will be saddled with the tax. The tax will cost more than the sugary drinks. All parties again agreed to begin advertising and setting up polling sites throughout the village. The date of Tuesday, May 2nd would be the end time for voting. The mitote, or gossip, around the village and the nation. Wow, money coming in from various groups, even the Big Apple. New York City, questions, questions, and more questions. Questions. Should government control an individual's eating habits? Can government be a better parent than mom and dad? 2 cents tax isn't much when it comes to the children's health and education. Are we rushing into an inequitable tax without proper comprehensive planning? Do we have full participation from municipal leaders? Who will be in charge and who will administer the program? What about a fix from our top statewide legislature? Can we count on drinking enough sugary drinks to come up with the 7 million proposed by December 2017? Many do not drink sugary drinks. Does this mean that people who drink soda must compensate for those who don't? These questions are still pending. Even up till the last minute today, the population is being bombarded with phone calls and mailers. Bill and I hope to bring out with these two guests some of the questions that you might have and hopefully some answers. Bill, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I think you did a good job of covering it and putting it in colloquial terms, but this is truly a national issue, apparently, that is now being on the test floor of Santa Fe, the city of holy faith nestled in the blood of Christ mountains, and we are a very special capital city for us to have this experience. And there'll be challenges all around, but we have our guests here who are more informed than we are, and I'm here to learn because I haven't voted yet, and I'm looking forward, based on this conversation, on what I want to do. So what do you say we start with you setting up the pro for this conversation?
Sure. So I'm a native New Mexican. I grew up in Albuquerque and I've lived in Santa Fe for about 3 years now. I have worked in early childhood education for most of my career, and so it's really my business in talking about the benefits of early childhood education and how we're expanding and really how we're not expanding in this state. So a few statistics to put out there. We are currently 49th in the nation in overall child well-being. The Annie E. Casey Foundation puts out an annual report looking at 16 indicators that range from childhood poverty, which by the way, we are worst in the country for, looking at rates of parent high school graduation, 16 indicators that basically give us that 49th ranking. We've had it for about 5 years now. 4 years ago, we were dead last, and we hear from constituents saying, thank goodness for Mississippi, because we basically play hot potato with that ranking with them. Like I said, we're worse in childhood poverty. Those numbers seem really arbitrary, but it's important to take a moment to think about what they mean in the grand scheme of things. When a child is hungry, when a child doesn't have any access to early childhood education, when a child's parents are living in transient housing, we see that take place in a myriad of ways in K through 12 schooling. It means that a child is often not ready, not reading at grade level by 3rd grade. We also know that the best indicator for 3rd grade reading is kindergarten readiness. The best indicator for kindergarten readiness is how many words a child hears from ages 0 to 5. When we have a child who's in high quality preschool, they're able to be read to on a daily basis. They're hearing a larger vocabulary. When we have high certified teachers with bachelor's degrees in the room, we know that the vocabulary that a child is hearing is greater. And so one of the biggest things that we advocate in the early childhood education field is really the high quality setting of preschools. And that's really what the mayor has taken to heart. He has listened to early child education experts in their field for a couple of years now and has really taken that to heart in order to create this implementation guideline. As a mother in this state, I'm not going anywhere. This is where we're going to raise our children. I'm really appalled and I'm really saddened that year after year, the state of New Mexico fails to fund this program to capacity. So what we see is that the rich have access, absolutely, and our low-income children of color do not. And what that means is that there's a 30 million word gap between low-income children of color and high-income children. And what that means is by 3rd grade, the high-income children who had access to early childhood education are applauded and they get to go into the 4th grade, they're reading at grade level, they're doing arithmetic at grade level, and the 3rd grader who's really struggling, the teacher is blamed, the school is blamed, the parents are blamed, and we cannot avoid all of this data and research. We know better, and it's time to stand up for our kids.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Simon, how about you? Would you like to put out your position on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce?
Well, thank you. Simon Brackley. I've been president of the Chamber of Commerce for 15 years. I'm a resident of Santa Fe for 30 years. The Chamber has been very involved in education and workforce development issues ever since I joined the Chamber, and I'm sure before that as well. Pre-K education has been a priority for the Chamber. We've worked with United Way, we've worked with statewide organizations in order to look at how we can improve our education system and infrastructure in New Mexico. There's no doubt that we have a great deal of work to do in the entire state. This is important not just for the issues that were just outlined, but also things like Keeping kids out of jail. If statisticians look ahead, they can predict that if young people don't have good education at an early age, they're more likely to end up in the penitentiary, which is not good for anyone in New Mexico. And from a more positive point of view, the earlier that young people learn to read, the earlier they get used to a classroom situation and have significant parental involvement, then the more likely they are to graduate, to take good positions, good jobs in New Mexico, start businesses in New Mexico, make a home here, and create a prosperous community. But our position is that none of these issues are unique to Santa Fe, the city of Santa Fe. These issues are statewide. They should be discussed on a statewide level. We need more leadership at a statewide level to create consensus around how we can fund programs that are effective and how they can be accountable at a statewide level. We have a great deal of concern that this issue is just focused on Santa Fe because, as you said earlier, Santa Fe is sort of a guinea pig for this experimental legislation. We don't think Santa Fe, New Mexico should be the guinea pig. We like to take good ideas that are proven from other places and institute those into our community rather than us taking on this extremely divisive issue, all of this money that has come in from outside on both sides of the position, which has really created a great deal of division. I believe if we'd have had a community-wide conversation about ways that we can fund this, part of that is lobbying at the state level to access funding there, but also looking at other options, ways to raise revenue in order to fund pre-K in Santa Fe and in our region. I think there are other taxes that are more acceptable to everybody in the community. For example, an online retail tax that was set aside, that money towards pre-K would be acceptable and palatable. I think a very modest gasoline tax would be acceptable by many people in the community, and perhaps a well-balanced range of fundraising issues. This issue seemed to have come up out of nowhere about 4 months ago, and now it's just dominated the community, and as I said, it's become very, very divisive rather than productive for all of us in Santa Fe.
That's true. I know the other day I heard that they were putting, they've been sending out the handouts and people writing across them with foul words. Not that I haven't heard the words, but that's not necessary. So it has become very divisive. But we're going to ask some questions that either one of you will know the answer to, because it's not anything that you're not going to know, because we have researched this pretty thoroughly. So first thing I want to ask is, why a new tax? City finance offices project a surplus of more than $15 million. Why can't we use that for pre-K?
So it's budgeting 101. You cannot use a non-recurring funding source for a recurring funding source.
Okay.
Better Way for Santa Fe and pre-K, the American Beverage Association, has talked about a sustainable funding source and has come against the soda tax because they don't believe it's sustainable. There's nothing more unsustainable than a one-time surplus. Also, most of that money is restricted. It's restricted for water use. I mean, Simon knows this. And so those scare tactics, I mean, when we talk about money coming into this city, it's important to distinguish where the money's coming from. So Michael Bloomberg is a philanthropist who is putting his money into cities to try to expand preschool. The American Beverage Association and Coca-Cola are businesses who are trying to protect their profits on the backs of working families and children.
I think Coca-Cola's trying to maintain their employment base here in Santa Fe. They have 80 employees here in town. It's a family-based distributorship. Coca-Cola is not made in Santa Fe, but it is distributed here. And of course, it's in their interest to prevent one tax that's just put on their one product rather than, as I said earlier, devise a more diverse tax base. To answer your question about the city budget, those budget conversations are going on now. I agree about the sustainable sources of revenue. It's not sure, that the city's not sure yet what their budget is going to look like. You're right, it's unsustainable, but we also believe that if the beverage tax goes through, and people drink less or shop elsewhere for their sugar drinks, then that revenue source will become unsustainable as well. The revenue will drop over the years, and we will lose the ability to fund this proposed pre-K program.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question because it seems like this is analogous to the old tobacco tax and other taxes that have been put on to literally modify our behavior in a way or encourage modification at the same time extracting from the consumer that additional funds to, but I think no one would claim that a sugary drink is as bad as smoking a cigarette.
Right.
So what's your comment on that?
I think if the community wants to have a program and focus on health and wellness, then let's have that conversation. Let's talk about using the parks that we've invested so much in. Let's talk about workplace wellness programs. Let's talk about testing for diabetes, for blood pressure, those kind of things. Let's talk about education for the community, about recreation, about getting out to our wonderful national forest more regularly. A health and wellness program is something that the Chamber of Commerce would absolutely support, and it would be a broader conversation about diet, about wellness, about aging, about testing, about education. This seems to have just selected one product, sugary drinks, including some juice products and others, energy drinks, to target. You mentioned tobacco. That was just really one product. What comes next? Are we going to talk about bacon or ice cream or sopapillas? What's the next item that the government will then decide what we are going to be able to shop for? Will it be fast food? We've already heard that some of the proponents are suggesting a fast food tax. Is it really the government's role in your life to decide what you should be eating and drinking? We don't think so.
How about you?
So talking about Coca-Cola and this one product, Coca-Cola makes over 200 products. And so one of them is Coca-Cola, pure sugar Coca-Cola. And so that's kind of what we're talking about. If you look at a 12-ounce can of Dr. Pepper, there are 10 teaspoons of sugar in that. So a kid comes home from school, grabs a Dr. Pepper, a Coke, well, Mountain Dew has much more sugar in it, and you have 10 teaspoons of sugar. I drink coffee every day. I have a mug of coffee. I would never think of putting 10 teaspoons of sugar in my mug of coffee. That's crazy. And so I think that when we're talking about tobacco, when we talk about safety belts, and we brought those into regulation, there is a tipping point when it comes to public health, especially in our low-income pockets, communities of color in this state. We see diabetes, heart disease going off the record, or off the records. And so what we need to do is to figure out a way that we can keep our children healthier, our families healthier, and part of it is the public education campaign, talking about the adverse health effects of soda. You know, when we talk about the other ways that we can fund pre-K, the state of New Mexico has failed to do that. We've talked about tapping the Permanent Land Grant Fund. And Simon, I didn't know, is the Chamber supportive of tapping the Permanent Land Grant Fund?
We've been against the proposals that have been put forward in the past, but that's certainly a conversation that should continue, in my view.
Sure.
And I think all of our energy as a community should go towards coming up with a productive, bipartisan solution, statewide rather than just here in Santa Fe.
Sure. So I think that parents in this state and caregivers are just really tired of waiting and tired of having a conversation. We've been doing that for a decade. Nothing is happening. We keep saying, well, wait for the legislative session. We heard Better Way saying that in January and in February. Well, we waited till the end of the session and we saw cuts everywhere. So what we're doing is we're supposed to be grateful that funding is staying flat, or that we didn't receive a 5% decline in funding. And what is happening is that children in this state are being forgotten. Working families are being forgotten. And that is an issue. And yes, maybe this is not the most perfect packaging of it, but it is something. We elected Mayor Gonzalez. Part of what he campaigned on was early childhood education. This is a solution. So for me, as someone who is a young citizen in this state, I'm 32, and talking about would I ever want to run for office? Well, I look at Mayor Gonzalez, who campaigned on this and is now being ostracized for coming up with a solution to fund early childhood education. We asked for him to do this. He's come to the table with a solution. He's not saying, well, let's have another conversation, let's delay, let's wait. I have a 3-year-old daughter. If somebody came up to my daughter and told her, just wait, we've almost got this figured out, can you just hold on for just a couple more years? It's obnoxious, and I think the people, parents and community members of this city are tired of that answer.
Okay. The Santa Fe New Mexican has endorsed it.
Yes.
Albuquerque Journal and the Reporter are against it.
Right.
I'd like to get into a little bit of talk about that. The New Mexican says they wanted to show sugar profiteers that locals do not want big corporations determining what happens in Santa Fe. That's what their quote was. On the Journal side, they said, tax hurts consumer spending power. It is a regressive one. Lower incomes who buy pay a bigger portion of income as a tax than people with higher incomes. The Reporter says, tax ultimately requires city to take on third-party contractors to collect tax from distributors. And also, who will oversee who gets the money and who monitors the incomes?
Right. So soda is not a food. We keep hearing this. It's not a food. You cannot sit down and feed this to my 3-year-old daughter. It's not going to satiate her. It's not nutrition. It is sugar and it's water. So that's the most important part. When we hear about how this tax is really going to hurt low-income people, it's actually going to disproportionately benefit low-income people of color, because at a preschooler, a 3-year-old Hispanic preschooler who is watching Spanish language television is more likely to watch a commercial for Coca-Cola than a 3-year-old child watching English language television. That is marketing. That is regressive. Diabetes is regressive. And as a taxpayer, I pay for that in higher insurance premiums. We all do. And so while Big Soda lines their pockets, they make our children very sick, they make our community members very sick, and I think it's really disgraceful that they've come into our community and want us to stand up behind them while they pay their big executives millions of dollars. It's disgraceful.
Okay.
Can I respond to that?
Yes, I was just going to.
And none of the Coca-Cola executives in Santa Fe are making millions of dollars, we should mention. Coca-Cola has been here since before all of us were here. They've been here since the 1920s in our community, serving beverages, some with sugar, some without. We should mention this is not just about Coca-Cola. This is about 80 different products that are affected here. Juice products, energy drinks, some coffee products, milk-based products that includes added sugar as well. So this is not just Coca-Cola itself. This is very broad what is being proposed. We think it's up to the parents to decide what their children are eating and drinking. It's entirely up to them. What was the second part of your point about?
Well, the Journal and the Reporter.
Creating the
regressive. That it was a regressive.
Well, this is our number one objection to this tax. This is people who make the most money statistically drink fewer sugary drinks, which means that this is the most regressive tax ever. Those people who make the least will pay the most. People who have the means to pay most tax towards these kinds of programs are going to pay little or nothing towards it. It's absolutely upside down. We think tax should fall on the people who have the ability to pay. And it's almost a patronizing quality of people saying, we know what's better for those people to pay tax in the community. So we have a real problem with this. I want to go back to your point about Mayor Gonzalez's campaign. He did mention pre-K as part of his campaign. He raised lots of issues when he was campaigning. It was a very successful campaign. But it seemed as though no conversation happened at the community level about this issue until it was rolled out in September as a done deal. Even now we're reading in the newspaper that the Santa Fe Community College, other organizations are going to be part of bringing in the tax and how it's going to be administered. But it's not an open process. I'm not hearing who's going to be on the commission, how they will be chosen, who's going to oversee this. It all seems to have been done at the very last minute, reacting to the questions that the media have asked, rather than being an open, inclusive, broad-based conversation amongst the entire community.
Let me ask you, is that the issue that we need to discuss here because it wasn't, or is that a viable option for a politician such as the mayor to move something forward? What is your reaction to that?
Yeah, you know, I think that we've been talking so much about early childhood education. So to give you a little bit of backstory, when I worked for Senator Heinrich for years, and when I heard about the Perry preschool model, I still remember what I was wearing, the day it was. And so the Perry Preschool model, and Simon knows this one well, so it was a program started in the 1960s in Ypsilanti, Michigan, and it was geared towards low-income African-American children. And so they did 2 groups. Each group was about 60 kids. The control group received high-quality preschool. And they've been following these kids for, well, they're not kids anymore, they're adults, for over 40 years. And so at age 27, they were already seeing absolutely staggering results. 44% more likely to have graduated from high school, 50% more less likely to become pregnant as teenagers, 46 more likely to have served time in jail. And so when I heard about this and I heard about the model and how it was being replicated in other states with similar numbers, I thought, well, let's just go home. We figured it out. This is great. And then you see how it's being funded. And so we know that this is where we can have the biggest return on investment, and it's where we invest the least. We can have conversations about, we're going to have a conversation, we're going to, wait on the state government, we're going to do this. This is something that's happening in our state today. Today, we have an issue with childhood poverty. Today, we have an issue with kids who are not reading at grade level, at 3rd grade reading level. So I don't know what the perfect solution is, but I know that this is one of them. And I know as a parent and as a member of this community, I am supporting this full-heartedly. I drink soda. I got this out of my own refrigerator. I will participate in paying this tax gladly. I can't wait. I hope I have that opportunity to invest back into my community. We looked at property taxes. The mayor looked at GRT. As a mom, again, I make this choice. I know this isn't good for me, but I still do it. It's at 4 o'clock on a Monday. Everybody, whatever. But the issue is, I need to buy shoes for my daughter every year. I need to buy eggs and bread to feed her. I need to buy new shoes for her. So if you want to talk about a tax that's actually going to hurt working families, those are the taxes that hurt people because there's no choice in making some of those purchases.
Okay, let me be the devil's advocate.
I thought that's what you were doing.
Let's say that I'm a single mother with 6 kids, God forbid. I run every day, I exercise, I put my kids on programs where they stay, healthy. Should I have to pay for a tax to compensate for others?
We live in a community together.
I know that.
And so that's something I've heard from the other side.
Yes.
It's actually something that makes me really sad as a community member, this idea that we're just going to look out for our own. So I have a child, so that's why I'm supportive of it. Mm-hmm. Well, I have a coworker who doesn't have children, but she has a nephew who lives in the community, and she lives in a neighborhood where there are kids, and she wants to live in an area where crime is reduced, and she wants to live in a happier, healthier place. So I think when we all do better, we all do better.
I don't disagree. Taxation is difficult to figure out how it can be fair, how you can tax those who can afford to pay, of course, for the benefit of those that can't. But at the same time, there are people who own property in Santa Fe. They never stay here. They never use the roads. They never use the hospitals. But they pay property tax every year. Is that a good thing or a bad thing that they're here or not here? There are pros and cons to all taxes. I think we have to look at people's ability to pay, what the needs are, but also avoid duplication. I want to point out that we have a state public education department. That's their job, to run education in our state, which takes right around half of our entire budget in the state of New Mexico. And we can have a long conversation about whether that's effective, whether it's working, not working, whether it's fair for both rural and urban communities as well. But part of that responsibility, in my view, should be running pre-K programs. We shouldn't have each municipality. If we allow this tax, we're going to have a Rio Rancho pre-K program, and one in Bernalillo, and one in Sandoval County, and Albuquerque, and Belen, and etc. And it's going to lead to an enormous number of small bureaucracies, all trying to figure it out because they're inexperienced in running these kinds of programs, working with a variety of different educational institutions to institute the training and the oversight and all of that. This is going to turn into just a huge bureaucracy all over New Mexico, piece by piece by piece. We don't think it's a piecemeal solution. We think that pre-K issues, challenges, funding should be discussed statewide. The department is already in place. Does it need some fine-tuning and improving? Probably. We should have part of that conversation as well, and that should happen through leadership at the statewide position rather than creating a local commission composed of who knows who with what kind of political connection. We haven't heard how that is going to be decided. Too many questions. We're not sure that this is the right way to go about it.
I think I'll even respond to this one in that sense. As a credentialed teacher, and I even currently teach as young as 3 at the ski basin as a ski instructor, we've looked in the paper, the governor has vetoed education legislation. There, as a credentialed teacher,
remove funding for higher
exactly.
education.
So there is that incentive by a community such as ours, which does have wealthy and unwealthy here, but we are the capital and we are the leaders for the state of New Mexico. And I think the city has a responsibility, as Daniel has said, that we might have to consider in this case. And nothing is perfect. What do they say? Making legislation and bills are like watching
sausage making,
or something like
We
that.
don't want to know what's in there.
Yeah, so it is a start. Now, this is the devil's advocate too in that way. So I think we have to give the city the benefit of the doubt of attempting to do something in this case, and the citizens will make that decision tomorrow with the vote.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you. You say Santa Fe is a leader for the state of New Mexico. I don't think it is. When we vote for our local government, our city councilors in our districts, we vote for issues of concern in our districts.
That's true.
We don't discuss public education at the statewide level or highways or statewide crime or penitentiaries. We don't do that with our city council candidates. Why are we putting this responsibility on them? I want them to fix the streets and the roads and the public safety and the police force rather than get involved and create a bureaucracy for something which is quite frankly out of their bailiwick and should be left up to the state officials. When we elect our state officials, then we'll ask them those questions about state budget, about more regional issues.
But I have to respond. I think only one of the city councilors voted against putting this up. So
He's also the only one on commercials.
yeah.
Yes.
So I'm not advocating for it. I'm just saying those are the issues that we're hearing, and we want to get them out so that people can consider them.
Certainly.
Go ahead, your response.
Sure. So there's a lot. So as far as the city council, this was a 2-prong approach to kind of getting this onto the ballot for tomorrow. And one of it was that it had to go through a series of committees. It was the Schoolhouse Rock, how a bill is made. Committee after committee after committee voted yes. 7 out of 8 city councilors voted yes. The only
They didn't vote yes to the text. They voted to putting it on the putting it on the ballot.
That's true.
Putting it on the ballot.
Right. The only city councilor who came out in opposition to it was Councilor Ron Trujillo, who is running for mayor. We've heard lots of conversation about why Mayor Gonzalez is doing this. I would like to know why Ron Trujillo is on commercials throughout the state talking about pre-K and about how his children didn't have pre-K and that they're fine. And so that's a very divisive argument for an elected official to make.
It is very divisive. And what I want to touch on now, and I'm going to kind of turn this one over to Bill, but getting into the divisiveness. Okay, at the Archdiocese, Father Adam, the rector, came out against this, saying tax is not for families, it's political. One day later, the Archbishop's involved in it. Oh, we're going to endorse it. We would prefer that it be through state legislation. Now that got pretty divisive, and again, the mayor popped in on that one and said, I will take the moral high ground on that, what the Pope would say. Bill is involved with this. You probably know more than I know about it.
Well, I have had for those who watch my TV show, Spirituality TV, I've recently interviewed Archbishop Wester in late January, and maybe the first in-depth, and you'll be able to see that on YouTube. Probably as end of this week, it'll probably be up, at least part of it. And he is a committed soul saver for the Lord and for poor people. He really has poor people's interest in mind. So I haven't had a chance to ask him about this particular issue itself, because he knows the burden will fall on the poor people in our community, and that's for sure. But I think there is a bigger issue here that as you brought out about we should have that conversation about the health, and I'm responsible for those those things from the back
props.
of my refrigerator, the props, about the different choices that we have to make. And yeah, even V8 has about 12 grams of sugar in it, but it's all
Vegetable juice.
natural. Yeah, it's all juice. The other ones are different. And you'll notice that only 2 of those would be taxable out of the 5. The water on the right is probably the best choice, mountain spring water, and then V8 on the other. But
Not at 4 o'clock on a Monday.
yeah, that's right, it does. I looked at it. But anyhow, the best water I've tasted around here is right up at the ski basin. If you get a chance to fill your bottle up there, I recommend it, mountain spring water. But I think there's a bigger issue here that we're all involved with, and we haven't reached how to do this, how to help these kids that need that. And I didn't get pre-K, and I didn't start reading Worth a Darn until about the end of the 3rd grade. And that was because of comic books. I didn't have a pre-K program, but I remember all of a sudden they started to speak to me, and that's something for the parents. That's even the Archbishop would say the first seminary and the first school is at home, and where the kids are and where you are at home. We hope that this whole conversation will encourage you to take more involvement with your kids, try to get the best thing for them to drink and to eat. As you mentioned, you're on the front lines with your daughter every day, and I'm sure there are many people there that have that same problem, either their kids or their grandchildren. So the real issue is to take care of their health. This is either going to move forward or it's not, but the conversation is out here, and we're not going to let it go, because this is something we need to talk about more and more, about how do we raise our consciousness as a community, as individuals, and find the right thing to do. So
Can we talk about the implementation really quick?
Go ahead.
So that's a great question, and unfortunately hasn't really been reported that much in the news. So the commission will be created by the City Council. Half of the commission will be parents. There will be 2 parents from each City Council district. The only requirement for the parent is that they have a child who's in preschool, so that someone like me, who is a working mother who is paying $12,000 a year in early childhood education costs, can really be at the table talking about what they're seeing at home, what they're seeing in their classrooms. The other half of the commission, again, will be appointed by City Council members, will be experts in early childhood education, teachers, things of that nature. There will be a half-time employee at the City of Santa Fe to staff the commission and help them with any needs that they have. And right here where we are at the Santa Fe Community College, they will be the administrator of the program. This is a nationally recognized school. You have the Early Childhood Center of Excellence. Jennifer Salee is the director and is an absolutely incredible, not only director, but champion of students and families. This is a 5-star NACCE accredited school. You have a waiting list of about 400 parents who are waiting to get on that list. We've also heard a lot of people saying, well, the state of New Mexico already has a preschool program. So important to understand, that is it is administered by the Public Education Department and by the Children, Youth, and Families Department. So parents have more choice. They can either send their children to a private school or a private center, like at a church or at the United Way, or through the public schools. Now, after thinking about that, you have either half-day or full-day programs. Half-day in the state of New Mexico are 2.5 hours. If a mother wants to go back to work or go back to school, you cannot do that in 2.5 hours. That is what we are mostly funding in this city. A full-day program is 6 hours, gives parents much more time and ability to go and get gainfully employed. Really quick too, just on the tax, this tax will create 200 jobs. Again, the Santa Fe Community College is at capacity for their workforce program, and able to train teachers at the preschool level. Early childhood education yields $3.30 in benefits for every dollar we invest here in Santa Fe, and those are the numbers that have been run by Kelly O'Donnell, who is the economist who's done all the numbers for this ordinance. Again, I sound like a broken record, but we cannot delay. We cannot just keep talking about how next year we might have a different solution. These are products that are making our families very sick, and they're mostly making Hispanic, low-income people very sick. So to pit this against low-income people is disingenuous. And as a Hispanic mother, I especially I'm concerned with that.
Just to go back to the makeup of the commission that you just described. So if it requires 3 parents who have kids in preschool at that time, so they'll rotate off very quickly. They'll serve very short terms, won't have an opportunity to build up experience and get involved in that way. Who gets
2-year terms.
Who gets to pick the teachers? Do teachers have their own agenda? What is their position? 200 jobs being created. Where are we going to find these people to take these 200 jobs? We have job shortages all over Santa Fe. We have housing shortages all over Santa Fe. We don't have the pipeline of people who are lined up ready to take teaching jobs. But the bigger question, I think, is we haven't had a chance to discuss these issues. Here we are the day before the election, and we're now having a conversation. I welcome this. This is great to be here with you. But I think as a community, we haven't had an open debate in public forums to say, what about the concerns? Only just this weekend are we hearing about how the community college is going to work with it. It's last minute. It's being rushed. It's not being well considered. I think we should say, have a broader conversation in the future.
The Santa Fe Community College, being a part of this ordinance, has been in the ordinance since January. So this is not rushed.
But
this
it
is
feels
not.
as though they weren't ready to be included as part of it.
They're so excited to be included. We've received such lovely support. We have an endorsement from the Santa Fe Community College. We have endorsements also from 200 local businesses and organizations. We have 4,000 signatures from local community members. One of our endorsers is the Hispano Chamber of Commerce. Ray Sandoval sent out a survey to his members to get a gauge of their support. And when it was clear that they were
very unusual for them to take a position on something, and it's interesting local politics that they would step up to do that.
And how did the endorsement for the Santa Fe Chamber work?
With similar to all of our positions, we have a government affairs committee, public policy committee that decides and debates what issues to recommend to the board of directors, and at that point we have a board vote on whether we should support, endorse, not take a position, etc. That's the process we have for all of our positions.
Is every business that's a part of the chamber, were they asked?
We don't do votes of that would become too ungainly. We have 950 member businesses, and to do an election on each issue would be very difficult, but we encourage our members to come and talk to the board and be heard, and we've had nothing but support from our member businesses.
One thing on this, will businesses be as affected as they say they're going to be affected?
Absolutely.
You go into Sprouts and say a woman with 6 kids that can't afford Cokes, can't afford this, can't afford that, she'll go buy a jug of lemonade mix. That's cheap.
Yeah,
But
that's
it'll
actually
go up to
taxed.
$28.
That'll be taxed.
It'll go up to $28 of a
so
container.
I want to make sure I get that right. I'm so glad you brought that up. So the canister of lemonade mix that the Better Way campaign keeps bringing up, and I wish I'd brought it with me, it's about this big.
Yes.
It's a 5-pound, 2.5-ounce canister, and it yields 1,008 ounces, or 136 cups. So it's a little it's concentrate. It's 94% sugar.
Okay.
What they will do is drive to Espanola, they'll drive to Santa Fe
That's
County,
my next question.
and they'll purchase their
So-
products there. And once they've gone to Espanola or Albuquerque or Costco to make those purchases of sugary drinks, they will then do the rest of their shopping there because they've already made the trip to do so. So this is going to negatively affect the local economy tremendously. I've already talked to people who are planning on bringing up truckloads of drinks from Costco on the weekend, parking in a parking lot in the county and selling drinks anyway. People will do that, and it's just going to impact local business. We should mention this is local retailers, local stores that are going to be affected, and local restaurants that are going to be affected. Things like free refills will go away. Giving free soft drinks to designated drivers will go away. Those kinds of benefits that a small business has are going to be punished and will stop happening.
I have a follow-up question on something that was mentioned earlier about if this tax does what it actually hopes to do on one level, reduce the consumption of these, what is the follow-up plan afterwards for funding for the pre-K once that has been diminished, if that is in fact what does happen?
Sure. So we're actually really lucky to have, we can talk all day and night about what we think is going to happen. We heard absolutely similar rhetoric from the chamber and from similar supporters about the living wage ordinance. The sky's going to fall. All the businesses will close down. Nobody will work in Santa Fe anymore.
Let me respond to that. Nobody said that nobody's going to work in Santa Fe anymore. We said there would be unintended consequences, one of which is in place now. Youth unemployment in Santa Fe is over 20%. Employers can't afford to hire young people with no experience and start paying them $11 plus an hour to come into the workplace. Youth are being affected very much by the mandated minimum wage. I don't think we're here to discuss that issue from 13 years ago. The sky didn't fall, you're exactly right. But our economy has taken a long time to recover. There are hidden consequences to mandated minimum in each municipality in New Mexico.
I think it's really important to bring up. I think it's important to bring up because when you bring up progressive legislation or something that seems unpopular and somebody tells you this is going to happen and this is going to happen, they're scare tactics, and they work really well in communities, especially communities in New Mexico where people, this woman with 6 kids, I feel like we should give her a name, but wow, I'm going to get hit the most. My goodness, I shouldn't vote for this. This is really going to affect my pocketbook. When we know that that's not what's true. We now live in a community where people are paid well, and that's important. That brings business in. When we can pass a soda tax here in this community, we will be able to employ 200 people in early childhood education professions. One of the issues with actually bringing in more people into this profession is that there's not enough money to do it well, right? And so you are at capacity here at the Santa Fe Community College. There's not enough money to fund more training for these teachers. So it's an incredible opportunity to actually increase workforce. The other thing is, when I think about a working family coming into a community, hearing that they can move here from another state and that they're not going to have to pay for preschool. Again, I pay $12,000 a year for one child. So if you have 2 children, $24,000 right off the bat savings. That's a huge attractor for businesses and for working families to stay in Santa Fe, to live here. We can be the shining light in the state for not only actually caring about our kids and going ahead and funding early childhood education programming, but also in attracting workforce here.
Okay,
People will be laid off. We've already seen it in Philadelphia. The Pepsi distributor there has laid off over 100 people because of this experimental legislation. One of the ads that's running on the pro-tax side is of a restaurant that says they're not going to lay anybody off. They've already announced they're going to close their business. Whether it's because of this, because of the mandated wage, I don't know. They've said it's only 2 cents. It's not. It's 2 cents an ounce. There's all sorts of tactics out there that I don't think are truthful and honest.
Do you think that the hiding of $33 million by major companies, beverage companies,
I'm not
that was
familiar
one
with
of the things that was brought out. That
hiding.
yeah, that they have 33 million
Offshore accounts.
Offshore accounts. Yes.
That's out of my.
I don't know whether
world
that's
of
true or
expertise.
not.
When we sit and we try to defend a multi-billion-dollar corporation who makes their profits off of making people sick, I mean, I'm not surprised at all. One other thing that's really important, though, that I wasn't able to talk about is that a study was just released a few weeks ago in Berkeley, California. Now, Berkeley is the city that has the longest standing soda tax, about 2 years.
It's about half of what we're proposing here in Santa Fe.
Right, and so what they found was a 10% decrease in consumption and absolutely no negative effect in their economy. So, again, we can talk about this might happen. We're suspecting this could happen. In Philadelphia, that city that Simon just brought up, they are seeing record numbers in revenue. So every month, they are actually having more and more revenue from the soda tax. So yes, there was a tiny dip, and that's what we saw in Mexico City. There was a dip in consumption for a little bit, and then it plateaued. So we know that the sky is not going to fall. Businesses are not going to fail. In Philadelphia, also, what's important is we talk about the 40 jobs that have been lost in Philadelphia. Again, that's soda making these decisions, but we do know that 250 early childhood professionals have been hired. We do know that 2,500 3- and 4-year-olds are now in preschool seats that were not there. My job, I do not work for Coca-Cola, I do not work for the American Beverage Association. I am a mom, and my bottom line is not profits. My bottom line is trying to get as many children as possible into early childhood education settings.
I don't work for Coca-Cola either, by the way.
Let's talk a little bit. People have asked me, who's paying for all this? Who's paying for all these ads and everything? And I kind of took a little survey here. I believe on the con side, there's about 1.2 million that has been
Has
brought
been
in.
raised. Well, that's the last report. I think you'll probably find it's gone up since then.
It
but-
probably has. $980,000 paid out in advertising and other expenses. Funding from beverage associations.
Primarily the American Beverage Association,
Right.
sure. And
Smart Business of New Mexico and 700.
Progress.
Yes, 750 from the premier distributors. On the other side, of course, you had we mentioned Mayor Bloomberg. He's doing that not only for Santa Fe, but for other cities. Then you got a group called Vocal, which promotes social equity.
who are they?
I don't know. They didn't really
How
give,
are they funded? We don't know.
didn't give their funding on it.
Dark money is what they think they call that.
Well, it could be. I don't know. It just was
I'm
mentioned.
not familiar with both.
Was it for pro or con?
It was for proponents.
Okay.
Yeah. Then there were 40 individuals who contributed $5 to $20. You had $35 from Counselor Maestas. And you have a group called Olé. Now, that was another group I wasn't sure of.
Sure. Olé has a long-standing history in New Mexico for advancing progressive movements. We're excited to have their support. We're also really happy to have Michael Bloomberg support. When people talk about this dark money that's coming in, if you have the American Beverage Association backing you, they're just trying to protect their profits. That makes a lot of sense. Michael Bloomberg is only basically helping out cities who he views as a viable city that can do this. We're really lucky to live in a progressive city where a philanthropist believes that we might be able to pass this for our kids.
Let's talk about Olé just for a second. This is an anecdote personally. Somebody knocked on my door on a Saturday afternoon, came to talk about the tax. And I asked them, well, who are you working for? Why are you here? Oh, I'm working for Olé. I said, who are they? Oh, they're out of Albuquerque. They're making six-figure contributions to this pro-tax campaign here in Santa Fe. Excuse me. And I asked her why she was doing this. Oh, because we want to be good neighbors and care about our community, which I don't believe for a second that people are going to write hundreds of $1,000 checks. What is their motivation, and why do we have organizers from Albuquerque coming into Santa Fe proposing raising our taxes? How about they raise their own taxes and deal with the issue down there rather than coming up here, causing this controversy and divisive issue up here? Let's do it in Albuquerque if they want to do that. I'm very skeptical about
What do you think their motivation is?
Quite honestly, I think it's organized labor. I think that there are those out there who want to unionize preschools, and I think Olé takes money from organized labor in order to come into Santa Fe, and that's their ultimate goal, is to get more members for the American Teachers Union.
Organized labor is also part of the film industry here in New Mexico.
They have
And
an
bring in-
excellent local union.
Yep, and they bring in lots and lots of revenue into the city.
That's exactly right.
So
They
I
do.
think it's really sad when we talk about organized labor as these demons. The film industry is booming in this town, and we have organized labor, IATSE, and the people who work for them every day, good people. And this is our community. So Albuquerque is an hour away from us. We have people like Steven, who is the campaign manager for Better Way, who has come in from out of town, Coca-Cola execs who come in from Atlanta, American Beverage Association execs who come in from all over the place.
But they're very transparent about why they're here. The Olé is not being transparent about why they're here. What's their position?
So by being transparent and saying that you're here to protect your profits, and being transparent and saying you're here to advance social progress, whether or not you agree with those statements, those are transparent statements.
Well, I think advancing social progress is so vague it could mean anything.
Listen, we've only got a few minutes left, so we want to just try to bring together the final moments, give you guys a chance to take a couple of minutes to wrap up your position. Go
Let
ahead,
me ask
Carlene.
one real quick question. Somebody asked me before I came down here, ask one question. who's paying for the election? Is it coming out of these funds? Is the city paying for them? I mean,
To
that's got to
hold
be
the election itself?
to hold the election.
Yeah.
The taxpayer, of course. It comes from the city
I don't
budget.
know. Is it coming from the city budget?
Yes,
Yep.
it's
Okay.
between somewhere around $80,000, I think is what it costs to run all of the polling
Yeah, I
places.
wasn't sure of that.
Let me just recognize
If
the
it
volunteers,
passes,
by the way.
It will come out of the money for the soda tax.
Really? Okay, I didn't know that. Let me just recognize the volunteers who are sitting in the polling stations and running those machines. They've been working so hard. We've had early voting,
Absolutely.
additional polling stations this year. They're mostly seniors who give their time, and I had to stand in line before I voted early, and I'm just so impressed by those
Absolutely.
folks who give their time to
Yep.
do that. So just a community recognition.
As a person who counted absentee ballots, I promise you, please do early voting.
That's
It's just,
tough.
it drives you
I know,
crazy. It's
right.
not anybody does that, they deserve my credit. That's for sure. I've done it myself.
It's not rigged either,
I don't think so.
just to throw that in.
So we only have a few minutes, so get a chance to just wrap up your position. What do you think is the best thing for the city of Santa Fe?
Sure, I am in favor of this tax. I, again, as a young Hispanic mom, really quick, just to give you a quick little story, when I found out I was pregnant, I told my husband, of course, and then the very next day, I got on 3 waiting lists, and this was in Albuquerque. And I was the sole breadwinner in my household at the time. My husband was in graduate school. I was in graduate school. I worked full time. And my daughter was 4 weeks old before I got off of a waiting list. And that time, I was full of so much of anxiety. I was the sole breadwinner. I didn't know what we would do if we didn't get on a waiting list. Thankfully, we did. My daughter has been in high quality early childhood education setting, and I get to stay in the workforce. I get to stay gainfully employed. I'm able to use the schooling that I received here. I went to public education my entire life here in New Mexico. I received both my undergraduate and my graduate degrees at the University of New Mexico. I am not going anywhere, and my family isn't, and I am so proud of this mayor to come forward with an actual solution. Instead of rhetoric, instead of more talk, instead of more kicking the can down the road, and to try to do something for these kids who can't speak for themselves today. I'm here today for my daughter. She's 3 years old, and she can't be here to speak on behalf of herself. And like so many parents, I am tired of our national ranking. We are better than this, and a 2-cent per ounce tax on soda, if that's the way it has to be, I am very excited to have voted yes and to be in support of this.
Simon.
Sadly, I don't think this election is going to make any difference to our ranking on national ranks of education. This issue is bigger. The issue should be discussed statewide. I'm against this both as a representative of the business community. It's going to hurt business in Santa Fe. But also individually, I'm against it because I don't think it's well considered. I don't think it's been discussed by the entire community to come up with solutions and ways to fund potential pre-K programs in Santa Fe. I welcome a broader range conversation. We should do that regardless of how the election turns out tomorrow. We should continue to pay attention to this. It's been very disappointing. It's gotten so personal and diversive in our community. Perhaps the good news is that people are paying attention, and I think we're going to see very strong numbers at the polls, which is good news, I believe, to get people involved in the process in that way. I don't think it's the government's job. I don't think it's the city of Santa Fe's job to regulate what I choose to eat and drink. We want to encourage people to have healthy children, to have a well-balanced lifestyle in our community, to include healthy choices in terms of beverages, food, get outside, exercise. Let's all be healthier as a community, and let's stop pointing fingers at each other. Let's talk about the issues. It's been a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the
Yeah,
opportunity.
thank you so much.
I'd like to kind of close it up a little bit. My friends pro and con told me that this election is a dead heat. Early voting, big numbers of people coming out in Santa Fe, so it's been good for Santa Fe to have this going on, and it's been better to have a discussion because I've learned a lot from both of you. And so tomorrow the spotlight will be on Santa Fe, New Mexico, our little hamlet here. And so Santa Fe, let your voice be heard. You still have time to vote. Bill.
Yeah, thank you. On behalf of Carlene and myself, the Santa Fe community, Television, we want to share these thoughts with you and bring these wonderful people that came in. Thank you very much for your time and
Thank
willingness
you.
to do it. I'm very impressed with both of you and for the organizations you guys represent. So on behalf of everyone here at Santa Fe Community Television, Carlene and myself, we want to thank you for viewing, and please encourage your friends to get out, get more involved, become more educated, learn from these folks, watch the credits. There may be more information that you can follow up with them to get that information, and encourage your friends to get out and vote.
Simon, give me your hand. Donilla, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
And let's keep this civil.
Yep.
You bet.
Thank
Always.
you.
Go Santa
Absolutely.
Fe.
Thank you.
Set
Thanks
a
so
good
much, Simon.
example. My
Yeah.
pleasure. Thank you.
Okay.